That persistent afternoon brain fog, the kind that makes finding the right word feel like searching in a darkened room, isn't just a sign of a long day. And that uncomfortable, recurring bloat after meals, a feeling of pressure and fullness that seems to defy any dietary changes, it is a frustration many quietly endure, accepting it as a normal part of aging. But what if these two seemingly unrelated issues are not separate battles, but are in fact symptoms of a single, silent war being waged deep within the body? A war where the key to victory isn't a new medication or a drastic diet, but a forgotten type of fiber, a nutrient systematically stripped from the modern food supply. This is the story of how our internal world directly shapes our external reality. It changes everything. To understand this connection, one must first travel to an environment more complex and bustling than any city on Earth: the human gut microbiome. This is not simply a passive digestive tube, but a vast, intricate ecosystem teeming with trillions of microorganisms. For generations, the conversation around gut health was simplistic, focusing merely on digestion. But scientific understanding has undergone a profound revolution. Researchers now recognize this internal colony as a critical organ in its own right, a second brain, that profoundly influences mood, immunity, and even cognitive function. Within this ecosystem, there is a constant, delicate balance between beneficial bacteria, the allies of our well-being, and potentially harmful bacteria, the opportunists that thrive on chaos. The beneficial strains perform countless vital tasks. They synthesize essential vitamins, like B12 and vitamin K. They train the immune system, teaching it to distinguish between friend and foe. And most critically, they maintain the integrity of the gut lining, a microscopic barrier that is the gatekeeper between our internal world and our bloodstream. When these allies are well-fed and flourishing, the entire system operates in harmony. The body feels energized, the mind feels sharp, and digestion is calm and predictable. Conversely, when the harmful bacteria gain the upper hand, the system slides towards disorder. These microbes ferment foods improperly, producing gas and leading to the familiar feelings of bloating and discomfort. They create inflammatory compounds that irritate the sensitive gut lining, contributing to a state of chronic, low-grade agitation. For decades, it was assumed this irritation was contained within the gut. Science now knows that assumption was dangerously wrong. The fire that starts in the gut does not stay in the gut. So, if this internal ecosystem is so critical for everything from energy levels to mental clarity, why is it that modern life seems purpose-built to destroy it? The answer is simpler and more shocking than one might imagine. Our beneficial gut bacteria are selective eaters. They don't thrive on sugars or refined carbohydrates. They don't feed on fats or proteins. They have one preferred food source, a specific category of nutrient that acts as their exclusive fertilizer, allowing them to multiply and dominate the internal landscape. This crucial food is known as prebiotic fiber. It is essential to distinguish this from general dietary fiber. While all fiber is beneficial, the insoluble fiber found in something like wheat bran primarily acts as a bulking agent, aiding in mechanical digestion. Prebiotic fiber is different. It is soluble, and it passes through the stomach and small intestine undigested, arriving intact in the large intestine, where the vast majority of our gut microbes reside. Here, it becomes the fuel for a fermentation process that nourishes our microbial allies. As they feast on these specific fibers, they produce powerful compounds called short-chain fatty acids, or SCFAs. The most important of these is named butyrate. Butyrate is the single most important source of energy for the cells that line our colon. It actively strengthens the gut wall, reduces inflammation, and sends signals of well-being throughout the body. For millennia, human diets were naturally rich in these fibers. They were abundant in the tough roots, tubers, stems, and leaves that our ancestors consumed. Foods like chicory root, Jerusalem artichokes, dandelion greens, onions, garlic, and slightly underripe bananas were staples, constantly replenishing the food supply for their internal ecosystems. But the modern food system has systematically engineered these fibers out of our diet. Processing prioritizes shelf life, texture, and sweetness over microbial nourishment. Grains are refined, stripping away their fibrous layers. Vegetables and fruits are selectively bred to be sweeter and less bitter, a process that often reduces their prebiotic content. The very nutrients our most important internal allies need to survive have become scarce. We are, in effect, starving our own defenses. This creates a void, an opportunity for the more harmful bacteria, which thrive on sugars and processed foods, to take over. But not all fibers are created equal. In fact, in a desperate attempt to be healthier, many individuals increase their intake of certain popular fibers that, in an already compromised gut, might actually be making the problem of bloating and gas significantly worse. The key is not just to add any fiber, but to strategically reintroduce the specific, forgotten fibers that selectively feed our most beneficial bacteria, without feeding the troublemakers. The consequences of this dietary shift extend far beyond digestive discomfort. The link between a disordered gut and a foggy brain is no longer a fringe theory. It is established science, a field of study known as the gut-brain axis. This is a complex, two-way communication superhighway that is constantly active between the trillions of organisms in the gut and the command center in the head. This connection is both physical and chemical. The vagus nerve, the longest cranial nerve in the body, acts as a direct physical line of communication, reporting on the state of the gut directly to the brain. At the same time, the gut microbes are producing the vast majority of the body's neurotransmitters, the very chemical messengers that regulate our mood, stress levels, and cognitive function. When the gut is in a state of dysbiosis, meaning the harmful bacteria have taken over, they produce inflammatory signals instead of helpful ones. These signals of distress travel up the vagus nerve, telling the brain that something is wrong. Furthermore, this inflammation can begin to compromise the integrity of the gut barrier itself, a condition often referred to as leaky gut. When the gut lining is compromised, undigested food particles, toxins, and bacterial fragments can leak into the bloodstream, where they do not belong. The immune system, rightly identifying these as foreign invaders, launches a body-wide inflammatory response. It becomes a state of constant, low-grade internal alert. This systemic inflammation is a primary driver of countless chronic health issues, and it does not spare the brain. Studies from leading institutions are now revealing a staggering statistic. Up to 90% of the body's serotonin, the primary neurotransmitter associated with feelings of well-being and happiness, is produced in the gut, not the brain. Consider what this means for one's mental clarity and emotional stability when that crucial production line is compromised by a hostile microbial takeover. The fall in production is not just a side effect, it is a direct consequence. This leads to the pervasive and frustrating experience of brain fog. It's not a character flaw or a simple lack of focus. It is a physiological state. The inflammatory molecules, known as cytokines, that are released during the immune response in the body, can cross the highly selective blood-brain barrier. Once inside the brain's environment, they disrupt normal function. They interfere with the production of neurotransmitters, slow down communication between neurons, and contribute to a feeling of mental fatigue and reduced cognitive horsepower. One may find it harder to concentrate, experience lapses in short-term memory, or feel a general lack of mental sharpness. This is the silent war. It is not an overt infection that causes a fever, but a slow, grinding conflict that saps energy and clouds the mind over months and years. The bloating is the sound of the battle in the gut. The brain fog is the smoke that drifts up from the front lines. They are two symptoms of the same underlying cause: an internal ecosystem starved of its essential fuel. This low-grade inflammation is the invisible enemy. It doesn't typically show up on standard blood tests, and its symptoms are often dismissed by individuals and practitioners alike as simply the unavoidable consequences of getting older. But the evidence is now undeniable that it is an active process, one that can be halted and even reversed. How, then, can one detect this silent war? The signs are often hiding in plain sight, dismissed as minor annoyances. The first signs are, of course, in the gut itself. Chronic bloating, excessive gas, or unpredictable bowel habits are not normal functions of a healthy digestive system. They are distress signals. A feeling of fatigue that doesn't resolve with a good night's sleep is another key indicator. This isn't the healthy tiredness after a day of rewarding activity. It's a deep, cellular weariness that stems from the body's constant fight against low-level inflammation. Emerging research also links this internal state to unexplained joint aches and skin issues. The body's inflammatory response is not targeted, it is systemic, and it can manifest in the areas an individual is most susceptible. For many, this means increased stiffness in the morning or flare-ups of skin conditions that seem to have no direct cause. Recognizing these signs is the first step toward a ceasefire. The solution lies in strategically rearming and resupplying our microbial allies. This means reintroducing the specific prebiotic fibers that have been lost. There are several powerful classes of these fibers, each with unique benefits. The most well-researched are the fructans, which include inulin and fructooligosaccharides, or FOS. These are found in powerful concentrations in foods like chicory root, garlic, onions, and asparagus. Another critical group is the galacto-oligosaccharides, or GOS, which are found in legumes like lentils and chickpeas. By slowly and methodically reintroducing a diversity of these foods, one begins to shift the balance of power in the gut. It is a gradual process of repopulating a depleted landscape. But there is one source of prebiotic fiber that stands above the others in recent clinical studies. It is uniquely effective at producing the all-important short-chain fatty acid, butyrate, the compound that directly fuels the gut lining and powerfully reduces inflammation. Yet it is a source almost entirely absent from the Western diet, a forgotten food that may hold the single greatest key to ending this silent war. It is not found in the produce aisle, nor is it in a common vegetable. The nature of this specific fiber is what makes it so incredibly powerful, and its reintroduction can produce a cascade of benefits that are often felt within weeks, not months. The journey to reclaim one's mental clarity and digestive peace begins with understanding this single, overlooked ingredient. This ingredient is a specific type of soluble fiber derived from the sap of the acacia tree. It's known scientifically as gum arabic. For thousands of years, this sap was a cornerstone of nutrition for ancient civilizations, from the Egyptians who used it in medicine to hunter-gatherer tribes in Africa who relied on it as a staple during dry seasons. It was, in essence, one of humanity's first and most powerful prebiotics. So, the critical question is not just what it is, but why did we lose it? If this substance is so profoundly beneficial, a key to extinguishing the inflammatory fire in the gut and clearing the resulting brain fog, why is it completely absent from our modern world? The answer is not an accident. It is the result of a deliberate, decades-long shift in how our food is made. A shift that prioritized shelf life, texture, and profit above all else. This is the uncomfortable truth. The modern food system has systematically stripped our diet of its most protective compounds. Consider the apple. For our ancestors, an apple was eaten whole, skin and all. That skin is rich in pectin, another powerful prebiotic. Today, we consume it as clear, filtered apple juice, which has been stripped of all its fiber, leaving behind what is essentially sugar water. The same is true for grains. Whole grains were once stone ground, preserving the entire fibrous kernel. Now, they are industrially milled into fine, white flour, a process that removes the bran and the germ, the very parts that contain the essential fibers our gut bacteria desperately need. This wasn't done for our health. It was done for commerce. These fibrous, life-giving components reduce shelf stability. They can make textures less smooth, less predictable. In the logic of industrial food production, fiber is an inconvenience to be engineered out. And what has it been replaced with? Sugars, refined starches, and chemical preservatives. These ingredients not only fail to feed our beneficial gut bacteria, they actively feed the harmful, pro-inflammatory ones. It's a perfect storm. We have starved our allies and simultaneously armed our enemies. We have been led to believe that feeling bloated, tired, and mentally foggy is our own fault, a failure of willpower, or a consequence of aging. But the reality is that we are fighting a battle with an ecosystem that has been sabotaged. We are playing a game that has been rigged from the start by the very food we are told is safe and convenient. And this brings us to a more dangerous level of the problem. What happens when this state of imbalance is not corrected? When the gut remains a source of chronic, low-grade inflammation for years, or even decades, the consequences escalate dramatically. The blood-brain barrier, the protective shield that guards our most vital organ, can itself begin to weaken under this constant inflammatory assault. It becomes more permeable. This is a critical turning point. Suddenly, inflammatory molecules from the gut are no longer just circulating in the body. They have direct access to the brain's delicate control center. And here is where the story takes a deeply disturbing turn. This is not a passive process. What if I told you that the brain fog, the anxiety, the inability to focus, isn't just a symptom? What if it's a strategy? What if the very microbes we've been feeding with sugar and refined flour are capable of hijacking our neurochemistry, sending signals that perpetuate their own survival at the expense of ours? Are your cravings for junk food truly your cravings? Or are they a command sent from a compromised gut to a brain under siege? This isn't science fiction. It's a documented biological insurgency. This phenomenon is known in fringe neurological circles as affective microbial manipulation. It's the theory that certain pathogenic gut bacteria have evolved the ability to directly influence our emotional state. How? By manipulating the production of our most powerful neurotransmitters. They can interfere with serotonin, the chemical that governs mood and happiness. They can hijack the dopamine pathways, the system of reward and motivation. Think about it. What is the fastest way to get a short-term dopamine hit? A quick surge of relief from feelings of anxiety or low mood? Sugar. Refined carbohydrates. The very foods these microbes feast on. Is it possible that the low-grade depression and persistent anxiety that plagues modern society isn't just a psychological issue, but a hostage situation? What if these microbes are intentionally lowering our baseline mood, creating a state of perpetual dissatisfaction that only their preferred food can temporarily fix? They are creating the disease and then selling us the cure. This creates a terrifying feedback loop. You feel bad, so you eat the junk food. The junk food feeds the bad microbes. The bad microbes multiply and release more inflammatory molecules, further damaging your gut and brain. They also release more mood-altering signals, which makes you feel even worse. So you reach for more junk food. It's a prison, built brick by brick with every processed meal, and the microbes are the wardens. And the scariest part? This system is incredibly stable. It actively fights any attempt to change it. Have you ever tried to start a healthy diet, only to be hit with intense cravings, headaches, irritability, and a crushing fatigue after just a few days? We call it sugar withdrawal or carb flu. But what if it's something more sinister? What if it's the desperate, final assault of a dying microbial colony? They are bombarding your brain with signals of distress, making you feel so physically and emotionally awful that you'll do anything, eat anything, to make it stop. They are fighting for their survival, and they are using your own brain as the battlefield. This is why willpower so often fails. You're not just fighting a bad habit, you're fighting a deeply entrenched, intelligent ecosystem that is using your own neurochemistry against you. So how do we break the cycle? How do we disarm these microbial hijackers and reclaim our own minds? The answer doesn't lie in a battle of wills. It lies in changing the terrain of the war. We change the terrain by launching a counterinsurgency. This isn't a war of attrition, it's a war of logistics. It has three core objectives: starve the enemy, feed our allies, and reinforce the borders. This is how you orchestrate a revolution from the inside out, turning a compromised state back into a thriving republic. First, we starve the enemy. Every time you choose whole, unprocessed food over a sugary snack or a refined grain, you are cutting a critical supply line. You are denying the hijackers the very fuel they need to multiply and broadcast their malicious signals. This is the most difficult phase, the moment the rebellion is at its most vulnerable. But it is also the most critical. Next, we feed our allies. As the pathogenic microbes weaken, we airdrop supplies to the beleaguered forces of good. This support comes in the form of prebiotic fiber, the complex carbohydrates found in a huge diversity of plants. This is the food your true allies have been starving for. Onions, garlic, asparagus, bananas, whole grains. This is their ammunition. With our allies fed and fighting back, we deploy reinforcements. We actively repopulate the gut with new, beneficial strains of bacteria through probiotics, found in fermented foods like yogurt, kefir, and kimchi. These are fresh troops arriving on the battlefield, helping to overwhelm the remaining insurgents and, crucially, to begin rebuilding the damaged infrastructure. And as the border is secured, the entire ecosystem shifts. The inflammation flooding your system recedes. The constant assault on your blood-brain barrier ceases, allowing it to heal. And for the first time in years, your brain is free. The hostile signals stop. The neurochemical manipulation ends. The fog begins to lift. This is the moment you get yourself back. The energy isn't just a caffeine buzz. It's deep and cellular. The good mood isn't a fleeting sugar high. It's a stable sense of well-being. The clarity isn't a temporary focus. It's the default state of a mind that is finally at peace, no longer under siege. You are no longer a hostage. You are the liberator. The battle for your health is not fought in the gym or on the scale. It is fought here, in the microscopic world within. It's a battle for your biology, for your mood, for your mind. And it is a battle you can win. You have the strategy. Now you need the tactics. If you are ready to stop fighting a war of willpower and start winning a war of strategy, to reclaim your body and your brain from the hijackers, then your mission begins now. Subscribe to Better_Health, and we will show you how.